Hello, this is Siri and you're listening to my favorite podcast, Not Real Art. I live for this shit cause it's totally lit.
Let's go!
Greetings, artists and art lovers. Welcome to Not Real Art, Siri's favorite creative culture podcast. I'm your host, Sourdough, and today I'm joined by a writer and meditation advocate, David Gerken. Welcome, David.
Good to be here, Sourdough.
How are you today, sir?
I'm lovely, thank you.
You seem very relaxed. Is this the benefits of meditation?
Yes, it is. It's almost 7 years of regular meditation, and it makes me sound like I've been, smoking ganja, but I haven't. I'm just very relaxed.
You can always do that. It's legal now. So
I know. So good to be here.
Good. Well, good. I was hoping that you'd give my chair a little credit for your comfort because, that's a pretty comfortable chair you're sitting in.
For all of you people out there who obviously can't see this, Sourdough has very comfortable chairs for his guests. So,
well, we do
I
what we
recommend
can.
this highly.
We do what we can. We want to make things as hospitable as possible.
Well, good stuff.
Yeah. Well, David, it's great having you here. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while. You and I go back, for the sake of our listeners, you and I go back as friends for a while now. And, I think when we first met, I would say you were a bit of a hothead. You were a little stressed. You were in the throes of Hollywood drama as a writer, as a Emmy award-winning writer, quite frankly. Am I wrong about that? You won a little.
Well, I was part
way,
of the writing staff that won the best drama series on the West Wing for the 02-03 season. So, sure, why not?
Good,
The Emmys
okay.
gave me a nice little certificate.
And that didn't fulfill your ever need. I mean, like you weren't just blissfully happy, and it seems like you'd have no reason to be stressed out.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have been so stressed out had it not been for the fact that after winning that Emmy, I got fired. So there's that.
Oh, hey.
Just
Yeah.
like anybody worth his or her salt in Hollywood, I got fired.
Isn't that life though, right? Just when you think, oh, good, I made it. I've broken through. This is my big shot. I finally did it. And then wham, curveball.
Yeah. That nowhere is that more true than in Hollywood, where essentially the bottom line on Hollywood is, as I always tell people, is whether you're into acting, directing, writing, producing, there's always a few jobs for many squillions of people looking to fill those. That's just the bottom line on the whole thing. But I don't regret at all. The quick backup on this is I spent the first 15 years after college in Washington, D.C., working as a legislative assistant and then as a lobbyist, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Were you part of the swamp that our president's trying to drain?
I wouldn't say so. I wasn't part of the, working for the cigarette companies or the gun companies or anything like that. And I was doing some pretty tame stuff. But anyway, it was, just fulfilling sort of my creative, drive to go get out of there and head to LA. And the fact is, it was tough for many of those years in LA in the writing business, but I don't regret doing it. I really, and one interesting thing that people don't really sort of understand when I say this is, I'm a guy who went from Washington, where supposedly you are setting policy and you're determining, all the laws of our country and how people live. It's important, heady, good stuff. And I went to LA, where you're, the land of soap operas and, mostly bad TV shows and films and stuff. However, I saw the writing business and what I was doing as definitely a jump up in sort of the soulfulness of what I was doing versus DC.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few. I thought it was really just cool stuff, especially working on the West Wing, where you're, actually dealing with those real world things in a creative way was just fantastic. I loved it.
What I find interesting about your journey is that clearly on one a big part of your being is, my words, maybe not yours, but I mean, clearly you have an activist mindset in terms of wanting to try to, impact our democracy, wanting to try to, be in the trenches, making our country a better place, which, it doesn't necessarily seem like a creative job, a creative profession. And yet you also clearly have this other part of your being that is very creative, very artistic. And it's interesting that you got to a point where you felt like you had to invest in your artistic self, and therefore you moved to LA. And then you have this really interesting opportunity to sort of combine those worlds, right? So it's like, it's not like you went to go work on Star Trek, you went to go work on West Wing. And so it was an interesting bridge.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the very specific way that those bridges were joined, because what I tried to do is obviously marry my knowledge of Washington from many years working there with my creative side, which I had learned a bit of as I was on that show. And what is the most important thing normally in any creative endeavor, especially writing, is in any screenplay, movie, TV play, you want to put your character through the most brutal conflict within themselves that you possibly can. People don't maybe realize that, but when they are really into something, often that is why they are, because someone is really struggling, a character that you really feel for.
Sure, right.
And you go through that journey with them. So what I did was I thought to myself, okay, what could be the most brutal thing that a president of the United States would have to go through? And I just thought, well, obviously, one of them would be, if not the biggest, is sending people to war. And knowing that you are going to create some incredible tragedy in some families, the wife, the mother, and the father, and that's got to be hard. And then it came down to, but you know what, if most of the time that stuff is fairly, the Iraq War notwithstanding, most of that stuff is not that hard a decision because you kind of have to do it in this country. World War II, whatever. So I thought, well, what if there had just been a Rwanda genocide in 1994 and Bill Clinton did not go in there, and he says it's the biggest regret he ever had as president, that he didn't go in and try and stop it when he kind of knew that it was about to happen, or in the first days when it was happening. So we had a fictional country there in this show called Kundu, which I just substituted for Rwanda. And I made it that President Bartlett got wind that there was about to be a massive massacre of I made up the names. In real life, it's the Tutsis and the Hutus. And his big conflict was that we don't have any interest there. There's no oil. There's no nothing. There's no geopolitical strategy. It's not next to Russia. It's not anything. So it's all about just saving innocent lives. And then it all came down to this story of him going to the Pentagon and saying, well, how many lives would we probably lose? It's called a casualty assessment report. And he got the report back. It was something on the order of 160 people. So then it became it's almost a mathematical game of, how many innocent African lives are worth one American soldier's life? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? And it really and Aaron Sorkin, our boss, loved it. And he did 4 episodes on it. And so anyway, that was just using sort of both sides and coming up with something. And that was actually 2 of those 4 episodes were submitted with our Emmy package of 6. You send in 6 episodes to the Emmy committee. And 2 out of 6 out of, a 24 episode season. So I was pretty happy.
Well, what I've always appreciated about you, getting to know you over the years, is that you are truly a multidimensional human being, right? You have your artistic side as a writer. You have your, dare I say, lawmaker side as a lobbyist and a, person that worked on the Hill and in DC, et cetera, in the trenches of our democracy. But you're also an incredible athlete as well. I mean, you played tennis at a high level. You played tennis in college, did you not?
I did. I played at Princeton for 4 years. and loved it. It was, the best thing about it, frankly, was that in high school and growing up, tennis was not the sexy sport. It was the football
those shorts,
players.
man. I mean, those shorts of the 70s, they were not sexy.
No, it was the football players that got all the girls. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, no girls liking me because of tennis. Even though our high school team in Corona Del Mar was one of the best in the country. But still, they love the football players. Well, I get to Princeton, and it's all these preppy girls, and they're like, ooh, tennis. And I'm like, yes, finally, I'm going to get some respect. But it was a lot of fun.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, it totally translated to D.C., where there were just a ton of tennis fanatics with very powerful tennis fanatics. George Mitchell, who I interned for, and then he became the Senate Majority Leader. He was arguably like the second or third most powerful person in America. Mm-hmm. And this guy's
I remember him
calling me up and saying, who are we playing doubles with this weekend?
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And, John Kerry, the guy who became Secretary of State, and, he and I would go out and have dinner, and after we'd play and just chat about stuff. I'm like 23, 24 years old. It was really fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have reinvented yourself a few different times in your life. And here you are again, reinventing yourself as an advocate for meditation. And, what I was about to say earlier is, having known you now for several years as your friend, seeing you, unwind, relax, on one path, while also, and that's, of course, just about quality of life, right? I mean, that's about being a better father, better husband, better human being. But then to also say, you know what, this is so effective that you want to share it. And so you wrote a book.
I did.
And so this, dare I say, David Gerken, a 4.0 version, is now as author and advocate for meditation. I don't know if that's quite the right phraseology you want to use, meditation advocate, because clearly you're a writer, you're an author, but you are focusing on meditation.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be even more specific. I am an advocate for meditation, but what happened was I got into this, I was, I think around 48 at the time. And it's like 6.5 years ago, my house is underwater with the mortgage crisis. I cannot find a job in writing to save myself. I mean, I couldn't get arrested, as they say in Hollywood. And I've got 2 kids under the age of 4. And I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? I mean, it was a tough time. And my sister had been in meditation. And so I tried it, but I finally said, I got to just give this a shot and see, maybe this will help me. And I made a big plan for 2013. I just said, I'm going for it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to give it the whole year. And any long story short is it happened. I made it happen, and it worked, and off I went. But the point is, I really got into it, and I got into sort of the world, so to speak, of going to meditation conferences and mindfulness conferences, one in DC and in Huntington Beach, and getting to know all the sort of what I call the spiritual elite, like Eckhart Tolle,
right,
and Joseph Goldstein and Tara Brach. I mean, there's a long, long list, Mickey Singer. And I'm one of these people. I'm not that brilliant. I'm really not. But one thing I'm really good at is getting to what is obvious. As my brother Chip, my oldest brother, used to always say to me when I was a kid, he'd go, Dave, you have an incredible command of the obvious. And he's right. And so what seemed so obvious to me, just screaming out in surveying the whole landscape of this world, was that all this stuff is out there about meditation. You can't. The New York Times has like a section devoted to it now online.
Right. It feels like I'm seeing every week a new app for meditation.
There's a new app. There's Headspace. Yeah. There's meditation dens opening up all over the place where you pop in and you meditate for half an hour.
One just opened up around the block from my house.
Around the block from your house. I mean, they're all over the place. So bottom line is, there's this huge push, and it's in the zeitgeist, so to speak. And yet, that's fact number 1. Fact number 2, though, is that nobody's doing it. Hardly anybody is meditating regularly. which means are you doing even like 10 or 15 minutes a day? And it doesn't have to be like every day. Let's say even 5 days a week. And I don't have, stats on that, but because I don't think anyone has done any kind of a poll, but I got to think that it's less than 1% of people in this country are meditating regularly. And the science has shown that to get the great benefits of it, you got to do it regularly. So that became my thing. That is my thing right now. It's not, you had said, so you're a meditation advocate. If I had to be more specific, I'd say I'm a regular meditation advocate. I'm trying to get people to develop a practice. And frankly, it's not that hard. I mean, it isn't. And that's what my book is about, is how to do it, which I'll be coming out with in a few months. But it's not that hard. And that's my whole mantra on this is I just want to spread this stuff to a greater swath of the population because it is just profoundly beneficial in just so many ways, some of which are very pragmatic, like it can help with depression. It definitely can help with anxiety, which most people have, like probably some level of anxiety, which I would describe as just that little feeling in your stomach or in your gut, your being, that you just don't feel like everything is quite right. That's almost always there. It doesn't mean it's killing you or anything, but it helps with that. It helps just sort of take away a lot of the just anxiety of life and just make you feel more peace inside. And, as far as I'm concerned, there's not much I can think of that is more important than that. Because what it ends up doing is it bleeds into the rest of your life, where when you start doing this and you start feeling more peace, you're going to become a better husband, a better wife. You're going to be a better dad, a better mom. You're going to be a better brother. You're going to be a better friend.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is to talk about how meditation can help artists be better artists. Right. Because, I was on your website, davidgerken.net, which is excellent, by the way. I don't know who helped you with that, but
thank you very much.
You definitely have a nice site there, 1.0, but you have some great articles on there. And on one of the articles, you're talking about sort of the ego versus the conscious self. Right?
Yep.
If I'm getting those words right.
You got it right.
And as an artist myself, having, many, many artist friends, I can tell you that we are cursed with sort of negative narrative, internal dialogue, just beating up ourselves about not being good enough, not being successful enough, not, being wherever we think we should be at this point in our careers, and, a lot of self-loathing.
Yeah. Well, those are kind of two different points. One is how can it actually help you as an artist? And on that point, I think it's pretty self-evident how meditation would help an artist with his or her actual work quality. And that has to do with the fact, and I think it is a fact, that most great art, and I don't care whether it's painting, writing, sculpting, dancing, I don't care what it is, comes from a place of no thought. You're not sitting there going, some Picasso, I don't think, was sitting there going, God, I want this. He just was going. I always go back to Bob Dylan, who I've just read a lot about. And, in the early 60s period where he's blowing in the wind and like a Rolling Stone and all that stuff, he would say that he just wasn't even there. When he was writing those songs, he said, I don't know. It was like I was just sort of transcribing. I wasn't thinking. It just sort of came.
Yeah, he was a kind of a vessel.
Yeah. And that's what you want to do. And and let's face it, even if you meditate 15 hours a day, it's not that you are going to then sit down at your next creative project and just bang out a masterpiece, because that stuff, even if your mind is still, it is sort of subtle and it comes when it comes. My point is that it will come a lot more readily and be much more, that genius that we all have will be much more available to you the quieter your mind gets. bottom line. I mean, I don't think anyone could argue with that. When your mind is chattering all the time and I suck. Oh my God, when am I going to be able to pay my bills? Oh God, my girlfriend's going to break up with me. You think you're going to create anything good out of that? I don't think so. And I will tell you, my meditation has really helped my writing. Because there is the creative aspect of it that I do think it just helps you, as I said, access that genius. Some people call it God. Whatever you want to call it, the universe that is working through you onto the canvas or your computer screen if you're writing a play, whatever. But it also helps in a very pragmatic way, I've found, with my writing, which is, let's face it, a lot of creative work, especially writing, comes down to, God, can I just get my butt in the chair and just start writing? Or am I going to be on the internet for the next 2.5 hours reading ESPN.com before I get going because I just can't get myself there? Well, then there's scientific studies that show that meditation actually scientifically helps you with focus. It helps you focus better. And what that means is, if you say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to just write this article, it just doesn't take me as long to just get going and just get started and just go. My focus just goes, which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, there's a word that keeps popping into my mind as I'm listening to you talk, and that word is flow. And, I think there have been a few times in my life where I feel like I have achieved flow. And whether it was, by accident or intentional, or the conditions were just right that it happened and I recognized it. And I think that those are miraculous moments, right? Where you're able to feel that sense of flow. And it sounds like that's what you're getting at. You're getting at that a consistent practice of meditation done faithfully over time will help one begin to create the conditions more regularly that will allow them to achieve, flow in their work, whatever it happens to be.
That's it. You just said it in probably a more articulate way than I just said it, because flow is a great word for it. I'm sure it's true for painters. I know it's true for writers when they're in the flow and it's just happening. But yeah, it's just making it easier for you to access that genius. And again, you can't just sort of call on it, because the moment you say, genius, let's go, we got to get working now, it flies away.
When I was on your website, davidgerken.net, when I was reading your articles, again, I forget which article it was, but I was reading and, the thought came to me, and I guess this was about the conscious self, but I wondered to what extent when we are kids, when we are children, we have that conscious intuition very naturally. And then as we grow older, with responsibility and stress of life, and just as, and the ego comes into play, like, is what you're advocating for almost this idea that we need to try to aspire to get back to that young beginner's mind?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is when they talk about enlightened beings. Whether if you're a Buddhist, you would believe that the Buddha achieved that. I'm a big advocate and follower of Eckhart Tolle. He's probably the closest I have seen to someone who is enlightened, and all most people really mean by that is it's just people who don't think a whole lot randomly. They think when they want to think. If they
are present in the moment.
They're just present in the moment. As Eckhart Tolle says, all I really am is just a conscious presence. There's really not a lot of Eckhart Tolle there. All he is, and we all have that. We're all essentially, as you read in my article about, that's sort of the two selves. The conscious self is that genius part of you that is also the part of you that is just in the moment and is here. Right now I'm looking at you. I see your feet, I see your room here. I see the paintings on the wall. That is happening right now. And my conscious self is in control. The minute I start looking out the window as you're asking me a question or something, and I think about, God, what time is my kid's soccer game this afternoon? That is, some people call it the egoic self. It's the chattering mind. that we all have that is involuntary. It's not like I say to myself, hey, let's think about that. It just happens.
And it's a pandemic.
Oh, it is like it's 99% of people across the globe. And that's why it's almost difficult to get this message to people, because it's like, well, yeah, of course I do that. Doesn't everybody? And the fact is, yes, everybody does do this. So essentially what we are is almost everyone on this planet are insane people in an insane asylum. And the good news is it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, you can, I'm not going to probably reach the level that Eckhart Tolle did, where I'm not chattering at all in my mind ever. That's pretty tough to attain. But what is attainable is if you're chattering 99.9% of the time and getting that down to even, let's say, 60% of the time from years of work on your meditation and just sort of focusing on that, that is an enormous improvement in the quality of your life. And it's not just the quality of your life, it's the quality of life all around you.
100%.
Your family benefits, your coworkers benefit, everybody benefits when you are just a little bit more present, because you become more compassionate. You're just a better, as I call it in the things I write, you just become a better human being.
Yeah. Well, and I think also it's a quality of life play as well. I mean, I'm not a regular practitioner of meditation at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I have meditated, and I can speak from personal experience that one of the interesting, powerful takeaways or insights I got from those times I was meditating is that it really has this effect of slowing time down. Right. I mean, I know for myself, like I'm 48, right? So I look up and I'm like, where the hell did the time go? 48 years, like it feels like 48 minutes. Right.
Right.
And, and so people talk about how time as you get older, and there are scientific reasons for this as well, apparently, but time speeds up. You feel, like you're moving quickly through time and space. And boy, wouldn't it be nice to slow that down? Wouldn't it be nice to feel like, you know what, I'm in the moment, time is moving as it is, but, it feels right. It doesn't feel too fast, doesn't feel too slow. Anyway, I just, always enjoyed that about meditation is that it brought me into the moment. It slowed time down, and it caused me to almost feel young again, because it brought me back to that mindset I had when I was a kid, when I didn't have to worry about the future. I didn't have to worry about the past. All I had to worry about was riding my bike.
Yep. That's all you were doing.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we grow up and it's natural, and there's reasons that this happens. The brain, I'll do a very quick sort of tutorial on this, but the human brain is, the Homo sapien brain. Basically, we've been around for roughly 100,000 to 200,000 years. They're not exactly sure, but the brain that we had in those first thousands of years in its development is not that different than the brains we have now, because it takes a long time for evolution to sort of change these things. And so what happened was, for all those 100,000 and more years of evolution, what were we doing? We were, as humans, we were hunting and gathering. We were walking around in the woods in a band of roughly 50 people, and we were killing animals to eat, and we were picking berries, and we were living in nature. And boy, we were not sitting around worried about what our boss was going to tell us at the 3:00 meeting he just called earlier in the day. We were in the moment pretty much. And so what happened was, then the quick end of this is that, roughly, 7,000, 8,000 years ago, they'd figure out a way to create agriculture and grow cattle and sheep and stuff like that. So we all stayed in one place. We stopped doing that. And for all those thousands of years since, humans have gotten just a little bit crazier as a result, because we're staying in one place, where that would create a huge population growth. It just created, and then you even look at the last 100 years, and now you got a phone, you can call people, you can fly on a plane somewhere. And then you got the iPhone 10, 12 years ago, whatever, the internet 25 years ago. And it's all just got us just a little bit crazy now. Our brains. I mean, I'm talking specifically about our brains and dealing with it. And one of the byproducts is the chattering mind.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating too, because you have to wonder how the development of our economy has driven, is a core driver of what you're talking about, right? Because when we're living in a barter economy, or we're living in a self-reliant world where we're killing what we eat, or we're raising what we eat, and it's just up to us to take care of our family and our tribe. And then yet suddenly there's a job in the city where you can make more money. And there's this migration of people to cities to make money in a more capitalistic pursuit, right? Your values change, your priorities change, right? And, when I think about things fundamentally or systemically as to why people are stressed out, why we don't meditate, I mean, on a certain level, it boils down to how we organize ourselves, how we organize our time, prioritize our time, our value system. And it feels like we're living in a time now where we don't value humanity in the way that I think what you're getting at.
Yeah. Well, I get what you're saying. And I think maybe this is a corollary to it, is we're so busy now. And people kind of wonder, like, why, what is so hard about meditation? And the hard part about meditation, at least getting started, is not so much the following your breath in and out and doing the actual meditation. I think the hardest part for most people is just stopping and sitting your butt in a chair and closing your eyes and then doing that. It's just, I know it's true for me. I'm almost 7 years in. Sometimes that is just the hardest part. I'm working on something. Okay, well, I'm going to meditate now. And it's just that thing about stopping and just, our brains don't want to stop. They're so addicted to go, 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 especially in America. Maybe the French are a little different. They're a little more relaxed and willing to enjoy life a bit more. But that's the biggest problem, is just our chattering brains, and they just don't want to stop. And it's a battle, but it's a battle so worth waging.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest part is just in the beginning, because like anything else, this is what my book is all about. And my ebook I've got on my website, which also describes how to do this, is it's all about just getting those first weeks in, and maybe just even like 8 weeks. Once you do that, it's going to become like a lot of things, like working out. Maybe when you hadn't worked out in a long time or ever, it was tough getting your butt out the door with your running shoes on or whatever you were doing. But then once you got going and you felt good with it, it probably felt bad and weird for you not to do it. That's what habits are. All I'm trying to do is help people develop a habit, and then they're off to the races.
Yeah. Well, I think, I appreciate your rigorous focus on a simplistic approach to getting started, in terms of, baby steps, right? To stopping, prioritizing 2 minutes a day, and so this is a very practical approach, which I, very much appreciate, However, I'm thinking about a lot of artists I know. I'm thinking about a lot of listeners out there, right, who, I know they're saying, thinking to themselves, yeah, but I'm just trying to pay my bills. Yeah, but, you're talking about self-actualization, and I'm here just trying to put food on my fucking table, And so what say you to folks who are struggling with basic needs? I mean, they're just trying to pay the bills and put food on the table. And here you are telling them to, stop, sit down and meditate. And for a person like that, that feels like a luxury they can't afford, I'm guessing, right? Because they're just in it.
One thing I would say is on a couple levels here. One is, as far as time, it is, relatively minuscule. I am not advocating that people spend an hour a day, 2 hours a day meditating. I'm not even advocating they spend 30 minutes a day meditating or even 20. If they can do and again, you work up to this. I would never start someone doing 15 minutes of meditation.
How much time a day are you meditating now? Take us through your day.
I do it in the morning. I have a little bit easier than most because I don't have to get up and be in the car so I can get to the office by 8 or 9 or whatever.
Right.
But I do it probably roughly at about 9 each morning after I've done some things beforehand.
Get the kids off to school.
Get the kids off to school,
Right.
Get them breakfast, do all that kind of thing. But anyway, the time part is doable. And as far as, okay, well, look, these people, I've got bills. I mean, how is this going to help me? Well, for many people, it will be the most important thing they do in their entire life. And I know that sounds pretty, grandiose, but here's why. Most people, I've got to pay my bills. I've got to do this. I got to do that. Most people are either living in, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done this in my past, or even more so, they're living in, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to do this? They're worrying about their future. Okay. That's what most of that sort of chatter is that's going on in your head. I know for me, it's that. It still is it's to some degree. How am I going to do this and that? What meditation is trying to do is get you, obviously, to live more in the present. Okay. Oh, great. Well, so what? What does that mean? Well, there is a hugely practical benefit to that. And it's this: the best work, the best anything, the best living you will do, and this is true for anybody, is going to be done in the present. So if you're worried about your future and you're worried about your bills and all that, if you focus on what you're doing like right now, and it does take somewhat of a leap of faith, just focus on what you're doing right now. If you're an artist, focus on your art every day. As much of moments as you can. Focus on exactly what that's all Zen is. Zen is just doing what you're doing when you're doing it. That's mindfulness too. You will be a better artist. You will make more money. You will do everything better. It's just, if you look at all the philosophies of, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, I don't care what it is. Most of them come back to that basic truth. Be in the moment. And that is where some people call it God, some people call it whatever. That's where your destiny lies. Everything is found by being in the moment.
Yeah.
And I try to sift things down as much as I can for my own life. And I'm probably going to write an article about this at some point, but it really comes down to just doing two things. It comes down to doing your best to be in the moment. And then the second thing is, and then trust in life. And some people would say trust in God, trust in the universe, trust in whatever. Because a lot of people would be like, well, what if I'm not worried about my bills, then, I'm going to go poor. So that's where the trusting in life comes in to play. But that's what I'm trying to do right now as best I can, is just, do what I'm doing. My old self of DC and West Wing and, the professional side of me starting this new venture, my old 1.0 of me would have said, okay, we got to go. We got to have our, 50-point to-do list for today to get the website going. What am I doing? And I would have been all uptight and anxious. And now I really am just working really hard on getting myself to just take one thing at a time. Give everything I can to that one thing, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. And as a result, I think I'm going to do better work. It's going to be more successful, and I'm not going to be as anxious. So it's like a triple win.
Yeah. I mean, that last comment, I think, is a powerful one, anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the person who's struggling, the woman, the mom, the dad, the entrepreneur, whatever, out there struggling to make ends meet, 9 out of 10 of them are, I'm guessing, incredibly anxious and stressed out. And I think, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is that a survival technique in that context is to try to gain clarity around quieting your mind.
Yes.
And meditation helps to quiet your mind so you can get clarity. And then that would reduce anxiety and stress.
Absolutely. I have an article it sort of deals with finding your true purpose in life, but it also deals with what we're talking about here, which is...
I still don't know what my true purpose is, by the way. I read that article and I was like, oh shit, now I'm all stressed out. I got to start meditating.
Yes. And then you won't be stressed out. No, I mean, the great things, the great pieces of art, the great epiphanies of life, when you really are sort of, have some flash of, God, this is what I really want to be doing and this and that. Most of this stuff is going to come to you much better. As I was just saying earlier about art, they're going to come to you in moments of silence and moments of stillness inside. They're not going to come to you while you're in bed at night fretting about how you're going to pay your health insurance premium for next month. They're going to come to you. And so all this is doing, this meditation thing, is just slowly but surely helping you just have more of those still moments inside, so that God, the universe, nature, whatever you want to call it, can sort of communicate with you and through you. Because my own sort of philosophy on this stuff is that I believe, that the universe, I'll call it, wants to sort of express itself through all of us. That's what life is all about, and it can't express itself through us if we're chattering. The only way it can sort of communicate what it wants through us is in those moments of stillness and silence.
Yeah. And I think we're also living in a time when we tend to, and maybe this is shifting, right? But it feels like we, at least over the last, few decades maybe, have been living in an era where we have perhaps valued or put a premium on rationality over intuition. And, maybe the best solution is to have both. I mean, you use your head, of course, in information and knowledge and science and data and whatever, but then somehow you use your gut or your intuition as that rudder or as your map. I don't know, but what analogy you want to use. But I know one of the things I've struggled with when I look back on my life, some of the biggest mistakes or the biggest problems or crises or what have you could have been mitigated or avoided altogether had I listened to my intuition rather than my head. And my gut was trying to tell me, but I put a premium on what my head was saying, and inevitably it was wrong. And, right. I can say now I'm at a point in my life where, and I haven't done that a whole lot, but when I've done that, it's been a whopper.
Right.
It's like, oh shit, that was a real fuck up.
Right.
And if I'd only listened to my gut. And so now I'm at a point in my life where, I'm working hard to try to pay more attention to my gut.
And all I'm saying is that your gut, the voice of your gut, which is your conscious self, really, is going to be much louder and much easier to hear and be much stronger than your head, which is your thoughts and all that stuff. The quieter you get and the more you can do that through meditation.
My shrink always tells me, I'll go in to see my shrink, and my shrink will say, "You're telling me what you think. Tell me what you feel."
Right.
Because it's so easy to say what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And because we live in our heads.
Yeah.
And I'm from the Midwest. I was grew up in a, kind of a environment, a culture where it was, stiff upper lip, wear your burdens with a smile, don't let them see you sweat, So basically it's this, complete bifurcation of, reality, right? It's like, okay, don't really tell me how you feel. Act like everything's okay. When that's a completely disingenuous and inauthentic way to live. And, I have struggled. A big part of my work in therapy, for example, is trying to understand how I feel about something. Because I realize many times I'm in my head about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not just, and it's been one of my challenges with therapy is to actually have the language. I wasn't given the language to be able to communicate how I feel about something, because actually I was never given permission to feel. It was like, no, kids are meant to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do. That was my full parenting philosophy of the 70s and the 80s and, in the Midwest. So, these, I mean, I know they, my parents meant well and all that good stuff, but, this has unintended consequences, right? In terms of how we grow up, how we see the world, how we live, how we move about the cabin, and so I can see that so much of my anxiety and my stress is tied to not being connected to my inner voice, my intuition. And a big part of that is because my mind is so noisy.
Yeah, it's strong, man. It is really strong. As you heard in my article, or read in my article about the conscious self, and I actually, just for fun, and that's part of my thing, I'm trying to bring some fun to this stuff and not be so sort of uppity, serious, like a lot of.
By the way, can I just say thank you for that? Because it annoys the shit out of me. This pompous, self-important, elitist, pretentious fucking attitude that permeates most of the self-help section of the bookstore, let alone, the spiritual section.
Well, the reason I'm doing that is, first of all, it's who I am. I mean, I've generally just been a humorous guy and light and fun since I was, I can remember. So I'm not going to be phony about it, but I also am doing it for a practical reason, which is I think there are jillions of people out there that are turned off to meditation and a lot of the spiritual stuff because they think it's for a bunch of, hippies and, or just sort of people who live in Boulder and Berkeley who are sort of above it all. And I wanted to go to Kansas. I wanted to go to Indiana. I want this stuff. My attitude on this stuff is that the huge part of this country, and frankly the world, but for now let's talk about America, the huge swath is missing out on this great stuff because they think it's weird and they would never be caught dead, meditating. Yeah. And I want to bring it to those people. And I'm going to do it by being fun. Right. And frankly, part of it, talking to them in ways that they will get, like talking about God. I have my own language for dealing with that, but man, you want to be a better Christian? Meditate, because it will quiet down. What better way to actually have a conversation with God than when in the silence that happens in your own head? It's not going to come from all this crazy stuff going on.
Isn't it to some extent tomato? I mean, pray. Isn't prayer another word for meditate?
Prayer is a form of meditation. I would say that certain kinds. If you're, sort of saying, going through a laundry list of this is what I want. I want praying for a Mercedes for Christmas from my husband. Thanks, please, Jesus, give that to me. I wouldn't call that prayer, but just sort of being silent and just trying to feel God come through you. And yeah, absolutely. Of course.
How were you? Were you raised Catholic?
I was raised Episcopalian.
Ah, okay.
So what I would call Catholic light.
Catholic light.
We were the first to break away.
Okay.
Good old Henry.
What was
VIII.
the issue? Why did Episcopalian
Henry VIII in 1538, I believe.
He wanted a divorce? What was the deal?
He wanted to divorce his wife because she couldn't. I think it was because she couldn't bear him a son, and so the Pope was not thrilled about that. And Henry VIII said bye-bye. Yeah. And that was the start of the Anglican Church, which is basically synonymous in our country with the Episcopal Church. Right. So sort of the start of the Reformation. Well, actually, Martin Luther posted his things, and I think in 1519, his 95 Theses on the cathedral at Wittenberg about why he couldn't stand the Pope and the Catholic Church. But anyway.
So bringing it back around, because I mean, I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of folks out there, I'm guessing raised in some kind of religious practice of some sort, or maybe not, but we're living in a time, we're living in such a fascinating time. And I think that's like a ridiculous thing to say, because I think, every time in history has been fascinating for various reasons, but we're living in a time where folks have lost faith in the institutions. Like usually we found faith and peace of mind and security in our church or in our education system or in our government or in our company that we worked for, what have you, right? And I think now we're at a time where a lot of folks have lost faith in the company they work for, or lost faith in their church, or lost faith in their government, And so I think what your book and your point of view here is timely, because kind of what you're getting at is the answers are inside us.
Yep, that. You're right. They all say this. I mean, Jesus saying the kingdom of God is within you. Buddhism is Hinduism, same thing with the Atman inside you and all. That's such good news, I tell people, because if it's all inside you, yeah, that's where your challenges are. But guess what? That means that you can get in there and do something about it. If you're looking at the world and all of your problems as being all external and, oh, my boss is doing this to me and my job is doing this to me and my friends, I wish they would be more responsive to me and my parents, I wish this, that. If you're looking at all your problems as being, quote, out there,
yeah,
you're screwed because you can't control all that stuff.
Right.
What you can control is how you respond and deal with that inside. Yeah. So I always tell people, just the other day, my sister is telling me about how she's dealing with some things with her work. And I'm just telling her, your problem is not with what's going on in your job. Your problem is with how you're dealing with what's going on with your job. You just need to really be mindful about changing that focus. And if you really do that, and you really work hard at it, I mean, the sky is the limit for just how good you can feel in general, like on a daily basis.
Well, that reminds me of, Emerson's essay on self-reliance, right? I mean, isn't the flip side of self-reliance personal responsibility?
Yeah.
Right. And part of what we're getting at, right, is this idea that, no, you know what? I'm going to accept responsibility for my happiness. I'm not going to pass the buck anymore.
Right.
Sure, there are assholes in the world that are trying to put negative energy, that are projecting negative energy into the world. Right. But it's up to me to determine whether or not I take that negative energy in, or I give that person the power over me.
Right.
To be happy or what have you. And so I accept responsibility for my happiness, in that I'm going to look for those answers inside me. Answers for my happiness, for my peace of mind, for my quality of life, and I think that what your book and everything you're talking about is so timely, because I feel like maybe, just maybe, we're at a time where people are starting to become conscious of the power that they have.
I do believe that is happening. I've been I don't know, I just have a very sort of optimistic viewpoint of what I would call the trajectory of humankind. Are things perfect? Of course not. You've still got ISIS blowing up churches and people shooting up this and that and awful things going on. But, I look at sort of in the 1950s, Jim Crow laws were still pretty hugely in force, and, civil rights for African Americans these days isn't perfect, but boy, I think it's getting better. It's on a good trajectory. I feel the same about gay rights, just all the things I think are on a decent trajectory. And most important, I think, is you would call, quote, the awakening of mankind. It's happening slowly, but I do think that it is moving in that direction, such that, I get a little wacky with this stuff, but it's not wacky. I mean, I look at, like, what would the world look like if in 300 years, 500 years, let's say it's 1,000 years, most people are doing some form of meditation each day. It's just a normal thing that you do, like eating. And the world population is just much more calm and less chattering in their minds. I mean, what would that world look like? I write in the book, it's like this is true. I have never been, as a kid, even as most of my adult life, I've never been sort of the pie in the sky, John Lennon, imagine all the people sharing all the world type. I just was never like that. I've always been a bit more pragmatic and like, you know what? It's just human nature. People can be bad. There's a bad part of us and it's just there. And through going through these experiences in these last years, I have fundamentally changed my view on that, because I don't believe that human nature has inherent sort of badness to it and violence that will never go away. I do believe that human nature really is, frankly, the product of the evolutionary status of the human mind at any given time. And so that as we keep doing more of this stuff and our brains change more and more, I could see a time where, the world might be a hell of a lot better place. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Although I would say that I think so much of human behavior is driven by the environment, right? And that we're shaped by environment, literally, right? And so we're living in a time now where our environment, in this environment that we find ourselves, and let me be more specific, first world civilization, right? We are becoming incredibly disconnected from the natural world, right? We're becoming way more connected to our devices than we are to the natural world, right? And I think a lot of modern ills, whether it's stress and anxiety, whether it's obesity, whether it's, obviously the issues we're having with sustainability on the planet with natural resources, so on and so forth, is largely driven by the fact that we are driven by capitalism in a high-tech world that is really forcing folks to be sedentary and plugged into a computer to do the work of the day, right? 100 years ago, obesity wasn't an issue. 100 years ago, sustainability wasn't an issue. Anxiety wasn't an issue because it was a very basic, much more of a simpler environment to live in, because we were probably farming, or we were, maybe doing more manual labor kinds of stuff. I've been enjoying, there's a show on Netflix right now called The Last Kingdom.
I've watched every episode.
Oh my God. So I'm halfway through, and I've just started season 3. Okay.
There's a chance I told you about this show, but keep going.
Maybe you did. I don't recall that, but like I saw it and I was like, that looks interesting. I got to oh my fucking God, it's amazing. I tell you, I'm enjoying it so much. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like that show, which of course is, fictionalized history, whatever. I mean, based in, real facts in there, but real people, real characters. However, the point is that, you watch that and you watch how human behavior was driven by the environment of the day, the brutal, nature of life in that time. Yeah. And you can start to see how, human behavior is driven by the context of the day. And today is very different than it was then, and in many ways, far better, obviously.
Yeah. Trade-offs. I agree with you that the environment and, we're being pulled away by our phones and our computers and everything. And that is another good thing about, meditation is what it really is about, just being in the moment and not, gee, did someone just email me something, or did someone just, I wonder what's going on in the basketball game I just checked like 40 seconds ago. Yeah, it's just, I know I sound like, God, this guy is crazy. It's like he thinks the solution to everything is, hey, just meditate. Well, what I would really say is the solution to everything is living more present moment oriented. It really is. It's the only place, as Eckhart Tolle would say, the only place you have ever lived and ever will live your life is in the present moment.
Sure.
It has always been that way, and it'll always be that way. So stop living in your head when you're not there.
Look, I am, like you, I think very practical person. And the things that resonate about everything you're talking about is exactly that, being present, but also decluttering the mind, quieting the mind, clarity of thought, clarity in your mind. And that's, I mean, it's such a powerful notion. And I mean, maybe it's a notion that comes to one later in life. I don't know. I don't know if my 25-year-old self and my 30-year-old self would give a shit. I was, maybe having too much fun and doing whatever it is I was doing. And, when you're younger, you are more in the present as well, because that's the joy of youth, right? And sort of the benefit of youth. But now, as a 48-year-old, man with 2 kids under 6, with, a house and bills and responsibilities, and, just having kids alone, that one thing alone is stressing me the fuck out.
Yeah. No, trust me. I've got 3.
It's like, yeah, you got me beat by 1. I mean, Jesus, I need what you got, because you seem much more relaxed than I am.
Well, it's because I'm in your house right now and not mine. I don't know. It's just all good. And let me just say real quick, for any one of your listeners, if they want to do this, I've thought about it long and hard about how to make it, as easy as possible. I'm not into making people work. I don't, you got to go through your paces. I want this. All I care about is that people do this. And I'm making it as easy as possible. And so I wrote a quick ebook, which is free, and go to my website, davidgerken.net. It's free. Just download it. And it's an easy read, and I'll take you through the paces on sort of how to do this in as easy a way as possible. And this is not how to meditate, it's that, but this really is how to develop a practice so that you're sort of doing it. It'd be like, I'm not teaching you how to do aerobics or run. If this is the working out analogy, I'm teaching you how to do working out, running regularly, so that it's not just a one-time thing. So,
well, and, I think it's important, and I'm speaking to myself, and I'm saying this out of my own personal experience. It's like, it's not what you do today, but it's what you do over time that matters, right? So when it comes to whether it's exercise or diet or meditation, right? It's okay if you failed today, as long as over the course of the next few months and years, the trend is moving in the right direction, right? Yeah. So, I could be working out and exercising and dieting and living a healthy life over the course of years, and therefore it's okay that I had an in and out double today.
Oh my God. Well, look, Scott, I made this up myself just because I am this pragmatic guy. And I've seen all the books, I've read all the books about meditation and the podcasts and all the stuff on the internet. And it occurred to me, you know what? If you're going to get people to regularly meditate, don't say they have to do it every frigging day, because they'll never do it.
Right.
Or they may do it for 30 straight days, and then they'll explode and go, oh, I missed a day, so I might as well just blow it off. So I came up with this thing that is totally reasonable and workable, where my program has people doing it 5 out of 7 days a week. Yeah. Okay? You don't have to do it every single day, or you'll just fail.
Right.
Do it 5 out of 7 days. Keep track. So, okay, great. I missed Monday. I missed Friday. So that means I got to do it Saturday and Sunday. Great. But I don't believe in this sort of like extreme thing on this. I'm into long-term success versus short-term killing it.
But this is such an important point you're making, because, I mean, don't you feel like we're living in an era of unrealistic expectations?
Yeah.
Right.
I do. It's moderation. You don't have to go crazy on this stuff. You look at the people who really, when I look at an Eckhart Tolle, I mean, his life is just unbelievably simple. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's not, waking up and doing 600 push-ups and then meditating for 4 hours. He just sort of lives presently.
But here's a question. Does he have kids?
He does not have kids.
Okay,
and by the way, that is a question. That is a question. I've never met the man, but if I ever did, that would be one of the questions I would ask is, so what about
It's very easy to be, yes.
It is different. And most of those sort of quote masters, whether they from India or wherever, have been sort of kidless. But, you're probably, if maybe the point is if you have kids, you're probably not going to be like a master someday, but that's okay.
Well, the irony is that the people with the kids really need this shit.
They do.
Right.
They do. And it's been great for me. And by the way, just so you know, I'm kind of talking the talk and walking the walk. I've got my 10-year-old and my 8-year-old. My son, Hank, and my daughter, Phoebe, are both meditating.
How cool is
5
that?
out of 7 days a week, right before school. And I'm only having them do like 3 minutes right now. But they're being great about it. And it's frankly, as the younger you are, I think sometimes the easier it is because you're right. Your mind is a little less frenetic at that age. It's a little easier to be present. And I have them do it like 10 minutes before they leave for school. And I think it's just making them much more relaxed. And my daughter sometimes gets anxious about stuff. And I think she's less anxious when she heads off to school. And it's just been great.
Are you raising your kid Episcopalian?
No, I am not, traditionally religious. I don't have a traditional religion. And by the way, the meditation thing, I hope this has come off in this talk we've had. I don't look at it as part of a religious thing. I look at it as completely secular. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not a Hindu. I know it is central in those religions, and I got no problem with that. That's not my thing. I have kind of my own sort of view of.
Well, how do you, I know this is maybe a little off topic. I'm just curious. It's great that you've got the kids practicing meditation. It's great for your health, body, mind, and spirit, but how are you approaching spirituality with the kids and religion and these issues of morality? And issues of morality, ethics, vis-a-vis, religion, spirituality, so on and so forth.
Well, to be honest, it hasn't come up a whole lot so far at age 10 and 8. And then I've got a 2-year-old who obviously is not into this stuff. But it just comes up more as just parental stuff of right and wrong and all kinds of stuff. I'm just trying to think. I will, though, now that you bring that up, I'm going to slowly... this doesn't really have to do with morality or anything but my daughter Phoebe, just yesterday I told her, look, all this breathing we're doing with your meditation and just breathing in and out. And, if you are ever at school and you're just for something, somebody says something happens that it really upsets you and you start to feel really sort of anxious or bad. I said, just remember that this breathing, your breath is always there for you. It's always a place you can go to just hopefully close your eyes and just do like 3 or 4 or 5 nice deep breaths. And it'll just get you sort of
great advice
back into whatever. Yeah. So I'm trying to use it with that kind of thing. But as the morality thing goes, I have a father and mother, but mostly my father, who was not religious very much at all, who was, exceedingly moral and in a good way, not in an overbearing way. He was like, look, you marry your wife, you don't cheat. It's pretty much, there's not a lot more to it than that. And so I'm trying to teach my kids about sort of just, look, what's right and wrong. Right. There's no need to sort of parse it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I bring it up just because, it's obviously germane to, my reality as well. Channing and I, my wife and I were talking and have talked about this a lot. Morality, ethics, values are absolutely, that you can absolutely teach them without religion. You don't need religion. You don't need, to talk about within the context of God or what have you to teach morality or values or ethics. And Channing and I come from 2 very different backgrounds. She was Episcopalian in a much more kind of relaxed kind of situation. I grew up in a much more devout kind of conservative Christian situation. And we are not church going. We are not a church going family. We do not take the kids to church. I often say that, I am a born again pagan, want my kids to discover their own beliefs. I don't want to spoon feed them, any answers. Because by the way, I don't think I mean, my answers are my answers. They're not answers for anyone else. But yet there are important things to be able to pass on, like meditation, to the kids. I mean, this is a very important point you're making, I think. And I know it's helpful for me as well to think about it moving forward with the kids. But, I just, I don't want to spoon feed them anything. But yet at the same time, my daughter already assumes there's a God because, of course, her friends talk about God because they're going to the synagogue or they're going to the church or they're going, and it's just part of conventional living, this idea that there is a God, and I'm not going to disavow that. I'm not going to tell her, no, there isn't, or no, I'm just going to let her walk her path. She did ask me about God. And it's funny. She said, is there a God, Dad? She asked me, not too long ago. And I said, well, some people believe there are, and there is, and she said, well, is God like a man or what, and I said, well, some people believe God is a man. I said, I personally believe God is a woman.
That's great.
When I said that, her eyes lit up and she smiled so big.
Oh my God.
It made
awesome.
her so happy to think that God could be and might be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
The joy on her face. It was like one of those special moments in life. I was like, I was so glad I said that. I mean, I was just like,
That's great.
Making it up as I go, but
Well, another way that this meditation stuff comes back on even this has to do with bringing up my kids. And I think we all, as kids, draw from our experience of how we were raised. And a lot of it is, the good parts, but then there's also the, God, what will I not do that my parents did?
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot of people that influences their parenting more than anything.
Right.
Well, my parents were fantastic on the whole, as I said, integrity and just do the right thing and just, very big on that in a really cool, good, positive way.
Sounds very balanced, very sort of practical.
Where we were not sort of, for me, I'm youngest of 6. My dad was a big, successful CEO of Pacific Life, and he basically created the company called PIMCO. And I mean, he was a really big deal, very into success. And so I got a lot of, sort of focus and emphasis on being successful, which, and he would couch it as, look, that doesn't mean you can't be a teacher. If you want to be a teacher, great, be a teacher.
How did he define success? Was it a monetary?
No, not at all. My dad that's another great thing about him. And it goes to values, as he was a big, he could have been a squillionaire, but he just didn't really care that much about money.
Mm-hmm.
He was more into, frankly, influence and power and stuff like that. But he was, it was just much more about be the best you can be. If you're going to be a teacher, be the best teacher you can be. And even great advice, though. No, you say it's great advice. It's not that it's bad advice, but I don't think that it's all about what you put at the top of the pyramid. You can be successful. I put that down a little bit lower. It's not that you shouldn't be successful, and it's not that you shouldn't be the best at what you can be. But even there, you're telling someone what their emphasis should be on. And what my thing is that I learned that I want to give to my kids is to focus, number one, on listening to themselves. That's the number one thing. That's what I'm going to harp on them about. What do you want? And I'm going to really get them to start asking that question repeatedly, because it doesn't come the first time usually. I was never asked, well, Dave, what do you really want to do? I don't care about your success. I mean, what are you like? What's big to you? And that's something that develops over time, I think, but you need to get that muscle.
And this gets back to the intuition.
And it gets back to in meditation in the sense that when are you going to hear best that voice telling you who you are and what you want to do in life and how you want to be better than when your mind is quiet. That's when it comes through. That's when it comes and communicates with you, is when things are quiet. And, so that's another sort of hopeful byproduct I'll get from my kids doing this stuff from an early age, is I just want them to be sort of the captains of their own ship in a sense. And I want them, and it takes guts and it takes courage to often listen to yourself because, I'll give you for instance, when I'm at Princeton and I'm a senior, every damn kid there is out interviewing at Morgan Stanley and Chase Manhattan Bank for their big fat Wall Street job that they were going to get when they graduated. And that's just sort of a, everyone's doing it. It's just the next thing in the line of, well, I went to Princeton and the next thing I need to do is get a big job there, or I go to Harvard Law School or whatever.
It was very conventional.
But they're not asking themselves, what do I really want in life?
Yeah.
And one guy who did, just as a fun little story, who I don't think did that in my class at Princeton, who was someone who I think did beat his own path, was a guy by the name of Jeff Bezos, who happens to be the richest person in the world right now. And it's because he had some creativity and some
Jeffrey was in your class?
What's
Jeffrey?
that?
Jeffrey was in your class?
Jeffrey Bezos.
You said Jeff Bezos, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
He was in your class, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I knew him a little bit. Nice guy. But the people that really, quote, make it, really, really make it, are those that are following a passion. Well, they're on the spectrum, but they're also following something inside. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard. What guts does that take? It's like, screw it. I really am into this thing. I want to do this business. It's awesome. It's cool. Steve Jobs, was a crazy guy, but man, I don't think he cared about being cool or being, I'm going to do this. No, he was just following his passion. So that's what I want for my kids.
Right.
It probably will mean I will not want them to go to like a Princeton, or even if they could, is do what don't just do what you think is going to be cool and everyone's going to look at you and go, wow, you're neat. I want them to get that sort of strength inside to do what they really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that takes courage. There's a lot of pressure on kids these days, right?
Yeah.
To live up to a certain standard. I think a lot of parents are living vicariously through their kids. They, are, trying to get their kids to, I don't want to say it's like, oh, my kid's going to make up for my mistakes, like I'm going to, and that's fucked up. My goal with my kids is to try to create the space for them whereby they can develop into the person that they're meant to be, and in such a way that they're able to be comfortable in their own skin, walking into any room on this planet. Like that's it, And I have to say, it's funny, you've been on my ass about meditating, as a good friend would be, the last many, 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 many months. But it's the story that you're telling me right now about teaching that tool to your kids that's really resonating with me in a special way, because that's what a parent's job is, right? To give them tools to manage themselves, manage life, manage the world, what have you. And what a powerful tool this is. And I want to apply that to my own child's life. And that, so just like with anything, right? Exercise or whatever, this is all good. I have a question for you. Yes. And you be honest.
Yeah.
Have you read the whole of the Bhagavad Gita?
Oh yeah,
the whole book.
Well, it's not that long.
Oh,
are you?
I thought it was, the one I had was like this fucking thick.
You might be I think the Bhagavad Gita is part of a longer thing called. It starts with an M. I can't remember what it's called. The Mahabharat, maybe something like that. But the Bhagavad Gita is actually only a couple hundred pages.
Okay, well then maybe. Well, then I need to get you have the Cliff Notes version apparently, because
no, the Bhagavad Gita is part of a longer. It's 18 books, right? I think it's 18 books, and each book is only, anywhere 4 to 8 or 9, 10 pages long.
Okay, well I'll have to get that edition, because the one I have or had was very thick, and I remember I read sections of it, but that was about that book and the Eckhart Tolle book I think are the only two books on your list that I have not read. So, on your website, davidgerken.net.
Yeah, he's talking about an article I wrote about 5 spiritual classics you've got to read.
That you have to read. And I thought that was a great list, by the way. I mean, yeah. How did you choose those 5?
Okay. They had to have a couple things. One is they had to be short-ish. Because I'm practical. I'm not going to go, hey, you got to go read the Old Testament. It's full of wisdom. It's like 1,000 pages long, whatever.
Right.
So they had to be short and also easy to read.
Yeah.
The only one on that list of 5 that's not easy to read, the language is a little bit hard, would be Emerson's essay on self-reliance, because it is written in sort of 1840s English. But it's doable. Yeah. And it's only 35 pages long. Right. So I didn't feel bad about that. But the other thing was that all 5 of them, just for me, just are unbelievably powerful in their own way. Right. And helpful, most important to people.
I was surprised not to see the Prophet on there by Khalil Gibran.
Yeah, that's, God, I haven't read that in a while. I know there's some good wisdom in there.
That's for your next article. The next 5 books for your
books 6 through 10.
Books 6 through 10. That's right. Yeah. David Gerken, my friend, this has been fun, but more than fun. I mean, it's been empowering and very gratifying, uplifting chat with you today, my friend.
Well, it's always good to be with you. You're one of the great souls on this planet.
Soul? I don't have a soul. What are you talking about? I sold my soul a long time ago.
Wow, you do a good job faking it, because you've got a very strong, awesome soul, and I'm crazy about it.
I love to dance to soul music, so maybe that's part of it.
There we go.
No, but listen, so before we wrap up, I want to make sure that our listeners are 100% clear on call to action. We've mentioned your website, davidgerken.net, now a few times. Yeah. It sounds like there is a free ebook available to them that will be incredibly helpful in terms of breaking down so much of what we talked about today and practical steps that they can apply to their lives starting, today, tomorrow, the next day.
It's called 5 Steps to a Regular Meditation Practice. And it's just the 5 things. It's, I think the book is about 40 pages long, roughly. Take you certainly less than an hour to read it, because it's written very, breezy, easy language. And, this is my 3rd act in life. First act was DC and politics. The second act was LA and writing. And my 3rd act is spreading meditation as far and wide as I possibly can, because it's just so profoundly valuable, and it's just not that hard. And that's what just hits me. I'm like, my God, what's going on? Let's just give this stuff a try. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, the world is a better place with you in it, my friend. This book is important. When does your book come out?
Book will be out. It's finished, but I'm not going out with it. I'm not exactly sure, but probably I'm going to guess the 4th quarter of this year.
Okay. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work. And when the book comes out, will you come back and talk some more?
You bet.
All right. Well, thanks for inspiring us today, Mr. Gerken.
You got it. Great to be here.
Be well. Cheers.